and others when going through difficult times. A story is told of a young man who loved the Lord, served the Lord as a young man. In God's mercy, blessed him with a beautiful wife. They were married for 4 months, and the wife started feeling unwell. He took the wife to the hospital, checked her, she was in and out, returned home. She continued feeling unwell. She was taken to hospital again. This time she did not return home. She passed away. And that young man was devastated. And he said, God, if this is how you treat the people that serve you, my journey with you ends here. Is it possible to serve God when you're having a worst day? Is it possible to serve God when you're going through difficult times? If it is possible, how does one do it? And today we are going to look at Joseph. And from this, we're going to see some principles that will help us serve God irrespective of the weather condition. Whether it is bright or cloudy, that we will serve God faithfully, just like Joseph does, serve the Lord in Potiphar's house and serve the Lord in prison. We are reading from Genesis chapter 40. I'm sure this is a text you've already interacted with in your Bible study this morning, but also in your personal Bible study before you came for service this morning. Genesis chapter 40 and verses 1 to 15. I'm not going to read because I'm sure we have read already. But as we go along, I will do some readings. Chapter 39 closes with a successful young man in Joseph in prison. In prison for choosing to obey God instead of indulging in sin. And last week, Elder Dan shared with us some very practical lessons on how we can resist temptation from the life of Joseph. So Joseph is right now in prison. Although it is unfortunate that a young man who has chosen to obey God finds himself in prison, we are told that even in prison, he is a successful young man. God has favored him so much that he is made a supervisor in this prison. And that was because God was with him. And we are told that Joseph saw success in whatever he did. Now, chapter 40 begins with the haunting words, sometime later. So right from there we see that Joseph's stay in this prison was not a short break. Joseph was in this prison for some time, and chances are high it was years that he spent in prison. He did not just take a break, but it took him long in this prison. We are told that after Joseph had spent some time in prison, 2 men were brought in this prison. That was the cupbearer and the chief baker. These men served the king. We are told that they did something. We are told exactly what they did. But what we know is that whatever they did angered Pharaoh so much that he decided to throw them in prison. Now you may look at a cupbearer and a baker and you may think these may have been low-ranking officials. But in actual sense, the cupbearer and the baker they were part of the group of the most trusted men in this kingdom. Because they dealt directly with the king. In fact, so often they were foreigners, they were brought in, they were imported people. They came and served from other countries. So they were high-ranking officials in the kingdom. So we are told that they did something and they were thrown in prison. By the way we see the story play out, we have the advantage of seeing how the story plays out. It chances are high that they were suspected that there was a plot to murder Pharaoh, perhaps through poisoning. And these 2 were the main suspects because they dealt directly with what Pharaoh had. because the baker made food for Pharaoh, and the cupbearer was in charge of Pharaoh's drinks. So some of the work that they did, for example, the cupbearer was to test the drinks before Pharaoh had them. So they are right now sent in prison, and we are told that they are in the same prison where Joseph is. Is that a coincidence? Is that by chance? Well, if you have been following from where we began, you see that behind the scenes, God is orchestrating everything that happens. There is nothing that is happening by chance. It was not by chance that Joseph was sold. It was not by chance that he was bought by Potiphar. It's not by chance that he finds himself in prison. And it's not by chance that these prisoners are sent to the same prison where he is. And we are told that when they are brought, they are assigned to Joseph. These two were put under Joseph's supervision. Even in prison, Joseph is made supervisor, as we have already seen. Now, when we look at this favorable treatment that is given to Joseph, we, in a way, conclude that Potiphar did not believe his wife. Potiphar did not believe the report that his wife gave him. Why? Because in chapter 39, verse 1, we know that the captain of the guard is Potiphar himself. So apparently, Potiphar's house was a prison for high-ranking officials. And so Potiphar himself was the one in charge of that prison. There is no way that Potiphar would have made Joseph a supervisor in this prison if he had believed the report from his wife. So from here we see the chances are high that Potiphar did not believe what his wife told him. Joseph is given leadership in prison, and we are told that he attended to them. In other words, Joseph served them. When these were put under Joseph's care, we are told that Joseph attended to them. Isn't it remarkable that in God's plan, leadership is meant for service? In God's plan, to be entrusted with leadership means to serve those one leads. Joseph is a top man in this prison, only below the captain of the guard, and yet he is the servant of the rest of the prisoners. Though Joseph had a high position, he did not use it to get service from other men, but he used it to serve others. You know, even Christ in Mark says, I did not come to be served, but to serve. Friends, in God's plan, when you are given the privilege of leading, you have been entrusted with an opportunity to serve others. As leaders of this church, I was telling the first service people, and sometimes people find this strange, but maybe Baptists understand it even more than maybe other denominations. That here, I am not your boss, you are my boss. As elders and pastors, deacons, ministry leaders, we are not here so that you serve us. We are here so that we serve you. That's God's ordained order. Now, of course, that is contrary to how the world views leadership. Because in the world, if you have a privileged position, people come kneeling down, people come begging you. That's why you see in police, some of those guys are building very big buildings, they're getting so much money, because people are coming at the bow. In God's created order, when you are a leader, you are a servant of those who lead. It's not the other way around. Of course, that sometimes breaks even some of the things established norms in the African setting of the man in the home. Someone say, well, you're going to make our wives. Yeah, but you are family heads, and mothers are part of family heads. The question is, do we use our leadership to serve those we lead, or we are doing it the other way? In God's created order, to be a leader is to be a servant of those that you lead. We see that Joseph serves those that he leads. And now the author of this book is going to take us and give us a snapshot of the kind of service that Joseph gives. And from that kind of service, we're going to see 3 principles that will help us to serve God even when we are going through difficult times. The truth is that it is easier to serve God when things are going on well. When it is shining, it is easier to come to church when it is shining. As we were coming to church this morning, we looked at the weather and we said, chances are high that some people today won't show up because the weather is not good. But you know, that is something that happens, that sometimes our service and dedication to God is dependent on outside factors. When things are going on well, God, I can serve. But when things are not going on well, God, I can't. How do we serve others when we feel unfairly treated in life also? Joseph shows us how. And I suggest 3 principles that we learn from Joseph's service that will help us to serve God and others even while in prisons of life. The first principle is this: keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. We're told that after these 2 had been in prison for some time, they had different dreams and different messages. The dreams meant things different. I can imagine that it was part of Joseph's routine that every day as a supervisor, he went around, said good morning to the prisoners, hi, how are you guys doing? Checked on them. And so it seems that on this particular day, he comes around to check on them, but he sees something is not right. They were sad. Notice that they are sad. Why do you look sad? Joseph asks. Now the word used for sad here is the same word used for raging storm in Jonah 1:15. Raging storm. The use of this word suggests that it was a raging storm inside the hearts of the cupbearer and the baker. There was a raging storm going on in the inside. Now on the surface, Joseph's question seems a bit, shall we say, stupid. We are sad because we are in prison. Joseph, can't you see that we are in prison? But on a deeper level, they were not always sad. And Joseph had seen them before as a supervisor. And he notices that on this day, something is different about them. Why should he care? Why should Joseph care for these people? He had his own worries himself. After all, he was in the same situation. He was in prison, in a foreign land, with an unknown future. To think about someone who should be thinking about only of themselves, Joseph ticks all the boxes. But Joseph cares for them. In verse 6, it says, and he saw that they were dejected. In order for us to serve God in our adversity, we have to keep our eyes open. We must keep our eyes open to notice the needs of those who are around us, our family members, to notice the needs of those who are in our community, to notice the needs of those in our church. Times of difficulty naturally tend to make us focus on ourselves, that there is no room for others. They convince us that we should be the ones to receive service instead of giving it. How can I give when I'm struggling financially myself? How can I encourage someone else when I am overwhelmed myself? We ask ourselves. How can I pray for someone else when I'm having my own struggles? We say to ourselves. How can I teach others when I'm struggling with seeing myself? How do I lead others when I'm struggling to lead my own life? Those are some of the questions we say to ourselves to justify why we need to focus on ourselves. Joseph did not allow to be blindfolded by self-pity, and he shows us how to live in Christ and serve others, even when life is at its worst. He kept his eyes open and saw that there was need. I also couldn't help but notice how much Joseph has grown. Do you remember where we began? You remember the kind of young man Joseph self-centered he was, how proud he was, how he was so focused only about himself. But look here where we are. God has used the difficult times and he has changed him. God has used the tough times of life to shape his heart. Joseph is a different person. We now see him as a picture of Jesus Christ himself, someone who is selfless, someone who is seeking to serve others. Are your eyes open, friends? Are you able to see those in need in your family, in your community, in Agape? We have so much need in this church, but are our eyes open? Are we able to see who is in need? For us to serve God in our adversity, we have to keep our eyes open. The second thing that we see is we have to keep our ears open. They said to him, we both had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them. Then Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. Joseph is willing to listen to them. He's not just noticed. He's not just calm. He's ready to see it. I imagine Joseph has a busy schedule that day. I imagine that other prisoners he has to meet. He is a busy man. And today we can say, I am busy. And because I'm busy, I can't do this, I can't do the other. Joseph is a busy man. But he says, no what? I will listen to these guys. Why are you sad? Joseph invites them to talk to him. They need a listening ear, and Joseph is willing to give it. They are sad because of dreams that they had last night. And the main reason as why they are sad is that they do not know of anyone in prison who is qualified to interpret these dreams. Now, why are these dreams such a big deal to these guys that they make them to feel that sad? We are told that Egyptians believed that dreams were revealing future events. And so these two were concerned that their future had been revealed to them, but then they had no interpretation. They had no one to help them understand what this dream meant. If they had not been in prison, they would have gone to Pharaoh's dream interpreters. Pharaoh had men who were specialized in interpreting dreams. And remember, these are high-ranking officials. They would have gone to them, and those men would have helped to interpret. And now, this day they are so sad because they are in prison. They don't have Pharaoh's men to help them interpret these dreams. Because they believe that dreams reveal future events. Now even today we have some believers who have so much trust in dreams. And every dream they have, they want to find out, what does this dream mean? What does this dream mean? And maybe like the Egyptians, they feel like dreams reveal the future. And maybe they feel through these dreams, God is telling them something about the future. Well, I think, like I've said before, someone who had before, that I think